Oh my gosh, this is so cool.
Well, hello, I'm Bruce Hawley, president of the Circus Historical Society, and welcome to Circus History Live. Circus History Live is produced monthly by the Circus Historical Society. In celebration of Women's History Month, tonight's episode features Circus Ring of Fame inductee, Peggy Williams. And now here's the host of Circus History Live, CHS Vice President, Chris Berry. Chris?
Thanks, Bruce. As you said, this is Women's History Month, and we are very honored today to have a very important person, a female, for American circus history, and that's Peggy Williams. Peggy spent a decade performing for Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey as a clown, and then another decade working on the circus's administration side, doing all kinds of things. She obviously was among one of the first women really to ever perform with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, first female graduate to get a contract, and she's now a member of the Circus Ring of Fame in Sarasota. So Peggy, thanks for joining us today, and congratulations on your induction into the Circus Ring of Fame.
Thank you. It's so good to be here, Chris. And I'm looking at all these amazing people, most of whom I know or have known in the past somewhere. Welcome, everybody. What a bunch of friends. Who gets that in their life, huh?
Well, you certainly deserve it. So, I guess let's just kind of get right to the start of this. Tell me a little bit about how you, Peggy Williams, became involved with the circus, how you became a clown.
Well, how I became involved with the circus was I was a senior in college at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I did finally finish college, but not that year. It was 1970. Everybody's doing their math now. I'm 74, okay? And the newspaper had a actually it was the insert in the newspaper, which was Parade Magazine, had a 2-paragraph thing about clown college. And I really wanted to get out of town. It was, there were riots and there was just all kinds of stuff going on. A building blew up and a guy had his thesis blown all over town because of little insurrections going on, like campus stuff going on. And this friend of mine, I was at the Nitty Gritty, which is a great bar in Madison. And at the Nitty Gritty, we had the newspaper in there, and one of the guys that works in there, I think it was a Muddy Waters concert or something, and he saw this the night after the Muddy Waters concert, and these 2 paragraphs, he said, "Williams, this one's for you." And he tossed me the Parade magazine, and I went. So they weren't auditioning in Madison. They only auditioned in the very big theater cities, right? Like Chicago and Denver and California and New York and Atlanta and all that. So they did not audition. So I had to write in for an application. They sent me it right away. And it was Mr. Ballantyne was the dean for the Clown College that year and many years to follow. And I filled out the application. And when I read the application, I was just astounded at the questions they asked. It was unlike anything I've ever seen. I filled it out, sent it back in, and I'm back at the bookstore, university bookstore. I'm putting Shakespeare for the freshman literature classes, putting the Shakespeare books up. And all of a sudden I get paged because we have these pillars with these phones with the long curly cords on them. And I was getting paged to go to that aisle in that place. So I went to that and I picked up the phone and said, "This is Peggy." And he said, "Hi, this is the dean of the Clown College." I went, "What?" and he said, "We want you to come to Clown College." And I said, "What?" And all the freshmen are lining up because I'm helping them find where to find their books. They're new. And I'm like, wow. Let me grab my pencil. I have to call you back because it's noisy here. I'm at work. And he said, okay, gave me his number. And we hung up. And as soon as I hung up my phone, I went, "I'm going to be a clown." And all these freshmen are looking at me like, "Really? I need this book." And I said, "Okay, let me help you find it." I was so excited. It just happened that way. It was just from an application and a phone call. So I got lucky.
You had to audition still, though.
I didn't have to audition.
Oh, you did not.
Many people got in that didn't audition. So
Okay.
I ended up going there on the Greyhound bus through Selma, Alabama, where you had to stay for a couple hours while you transferred buses. And I ended up in Venice, Florida. And then the audition was, can you cut 10 weeks of this? Can you do this?
Yeah.
And then
So
the
you
real
did-
audition was the graduation ceremony where Tommy Smothers and Emmett Kelly were in the audience. And I was like, oh, I'm nervous.
So you decide that you're going to be a clown. And did you have any experience going to circuses before?
No, I'll tell you where the connection was. I had some experience seeing tented shows that came to Madison. By and large, it was Cole Brothers and some of the other circuses that were intense. But by the time, and every now and then a Ringling Brothers, but it wasn't there every year. So our family went because families do that when you got kids, you know, and you smell the elephants and you sneeze at the hay and everything, and you go home and you talk about it at the dinner table, and that was it. But what got me interested in clowning wasn't that. It was that I majored in speech pathology, and speech pathology has to do with communication and communication disorders. And what that meant was I needed to, I wanted to get some skills in working with deaf people, very intrigued by the deaf world. And clowns do the same thing. They tell their story with props and hands and signals and all that, and they don't necessarily do it with, you know, boards with words on them, right? And I really wanted that experience. So I thought, hey, I've done 17 years in a row in school in Madison. I need a break. So it's only 10 weeks. And if I don't get it, I'll come back and reapply for grad school and continue. But so I went, and it took me 19 years to actually finish two classes that were suspended because the TAs went on strike because of salaries or something. So
And
that was my interest, though. It was the nonverbal communication.
I know that education became a big part of your career later on, but I want
Totally.
to talk right now about becoming a clown. So
Okay.
tell me a little bit about your makeup and how you decided that this was going to be who you are.
Well, in makeup classes at Clown College, my year, we had a few people who were seasoned veterans on the road. They were very concerned about the application of whatever makeup we decided to design and choose, because you have to wear it. You have to, we practiced putting makeup on our face and doing the powder and keeping it as clean as possible, taking shirts off, putting shirts back on, changing costumes without messing it up. And that was the technical side of the makeup. But the design, I wanted world peace, so I thought I'd put a tree of life right up the middle of my face. It was a horrible design. Mr. Ballantyne said, "You'll never get hired with that face. It doesn't mean anything. When you smile, it doesn't. You got to start over." And I went, I wasn't used to that kind of feedback from my professors. So
So this is what we got, though. This is
so I
what-
ended up being a white face. I didn't want to be an Auguste, and I certainly didn't consider being a tramp, although later on, a lovely woman clown wore tramp makeup and was very successful with it. So it just wasn't what I had in my imagination. So then my mentors that were on the road, they, you know, said, "I'll put the makeup behind." You can see I didn't make up behind my ear there. Yeah, in the ear, behind the ear. And they said, if you want to be European, you got to make the ear red, you know. And I just said, no, I'm American. I'm good. I'm good.
Well, the face that you ended up designing, probably with a little bit of help from the pros,
Oh, yeah.
is a classic. And I think anybody who has seen you,
Tears.
makeup,
Yeah.
I mean, truly a beautiful clown face that you developed there.
Thank you. It's I added the tears, and then Bobby Kay said you need some sparkle on the tears, because I mean, I had so many different parts to my makeup, and he said, you know, you just need to keep simplifying it and keep simplifying it. And as your face gets stronger muscularly from where you make your faces and how you mug, you'll see some natural lines. I mean, he was telling me to prepare for wrinkles, okay, but he called them natural mug lines. He was such a PR guy. He took me to Canada on a PR trip one time. He's just so good with words. So yeah, that's the simplified version.
So, you know, again, when you take a look at that face, I mean, this is the kind of clown face that you would see at Madison Square Garden, and you could see the emotions that you had, you know, up in the upper balconies, I would imagine.
Yeah, that was the whole point. You know, we didn't have video cameras and stuff like that then. They did in the later years of Clown College, where you could video how your face works when you make reactions, but we had to rely on each other to say, well, what do you think I'm reacting to here? I mean, it was kind of one of those things that you just figure it out as you go. And if it doesn't work with the audience, it's not going to work, in a bigger arena like a Madison Square Garden. You have to be able to emote to the audience, to everybody. So it got simple, and then it got solid, and I kept the same design for a long, many years.
So you've got this clown face, you're now a clown, you get a contract, you go on the road. What's it
Yeah.
like for this Wisconsin girl to suddenly be traveling cross country by train?
Oh my gosh. Well, the train was a big shock too, because I got a bunk. Now, not many people lived in a bunk as clowns. Most of them in the later clown college years after 72, they got a roomette with a sliding pocket door. So they had a door and the bunk that was, the table and the chairs that you make down to a bed with the cushions and all that stuff. But I just had bunk. I was in the single girls car, and the people in that car were not just, I was the only girl clown. There was a female contortionist, there was a wardrobe lady, there was a whole bunch of dancers, and they were lovely, but we all had curtains across our bunk, and then the hallway went down the middle of the car, and then there was another curtain and someone else was behind that. So that was an experience, living in a dormitory. It felt like summer camp, but forever, right?
Again, this is on the red unit, and we're talking about early 1970s.
Yeah, 1971, I had a bunk, and those bunk cars, there were many of them during those days. They were on both units, on red and blue, and those were retired Army hospital cars from World War II. So I guess there was a surplus when the war ended, and they were developing a second unit. So they made those living cars. For the clowns had that, and the single females had that, and the working men had bunks as well. And it was a beautiful way to travel. And you had one window, so you hoped that wherever they parked the train, it was on the light side, so you got sunshine. Sometimes it was near a tunnel or a building and you didn't get sun, but it changes every week, so you never have a bad zip code for more than a week.
Well, that red unit in the 1970s, you think back on those wonderful acts, from obviously Gunther Gable-Williams,
Oh my gosh.
Wolfgang Holtzmar, to those Bulgarian teeterboard troops, and Lou Jacobs, and all of these wonderful acts. I mean, tell us a little bit what it was like to be a kid, really being exposed to all these wonderful performers.
The iconic picture for me is on the mural that was in the Feld and Shaman office. It was donated then to the Ringling Museum. There's a doorway with 3 girl clowns peeking through the doorway. And those girl clowns I'm at the top. Janice Aria is in the middle. She was from the class of 72, and Ruth Chaddick is on the bottom, class of 74, and I was class of 70. So every 2 years, but that was what it felt like. We're peeking into the world of the circus, because everywhere you look on that mural, there's someone on a tight wire, on a flying trapeze. There's just amazing things like that. And
This is a slightly, there's Ruth's in this picture. Janice is not, but I think
right.
that is.
But it's that style of picture, and it's on the mural. And the only reason we made it on the mural there was because in the Feld office, there was a restaurant on the first floor, and that space where this doorway was ended up being blank, and so they had to fill it with something. So they put 3 girl clowns, and we all feel the same way. We talked about this a lot, Janice and Ruth and I. We peeked into the world of the circus. We didn't have parents or grandparents or 8 generations behind us. Don't have any generations moving forward that are in the circus. I mean, we were adopted by this amazing thing called circus, and all those Bulgarians and Romanians and Polish and Hungarians that I was used to in the first couple of years I was there, it never occurred to me that they lived behind the Iron Curtain. You know who told me that? My dad did. He said, I don't know about these people. I have to meet them. I said, have a barbecue in Madison when we play there. So they did. My brother and my dad staged the barbecue, and we had Johnsonville brats. And it was at a house. It wasn't very far from the arena, and a house on the lake. And one of the lakes, actually, oddly enough, the lake that the plane went down for Otis Redding when he flew to Madison, and him and his crew died in aircraft. It was that lake. We were at the foot of that lake for this barbecue, and all those countries have good sausage. but none of them had brats like we do in Wisconsin. So that was my dad. I walked him around. I had him meet everybody. And he said, oh, yeah, this is good. Stay where you're at. He was afraid. I don't know what he was afraid of.
So you told me the story once about learning to ride an elephant.
Oh my
Gunther
gosh.
Gable Williams getting, tell me a little bit about what happened that day.
Okay, so we all had to learn, clowns and dancers alike. We all had to learn how to ride elephants. We rode elephants sometimes in PR and animal walks, but we rode them in the show. The majority of us rode the same elephant each day in the show. And I rode an elephant named Eva, whose herd mates were Topsy and Toby. Eva, Topsy, and Toby, yeah. And they had been owned by several different owners. And so I was on Eva. Gunther says, oh, Clowny, he didn't learn our names. He knew the elephant names, but he didn't know our names until he saw us perform for a while. And he said, come over here. This is your elephant. And I looked at you. They all looked alike to me. I couldn't really tell the difference until you really get to know them, how they walk, how they move, how they stop, how they look around, how they flap their ears. They're very unique. And so he said, this is one. This is yours. Not that one. Not that one. This is yours. And he says, don't ever get on another elephant. This is your elephant for the show, right? Because we were in the managed number. It was the elephant, big elephant production. And so I had no idea how to get on. I'm looking, there's no stirrups. I've ridden horses before, but not a lot. There's no stirrups or anything. He said, okay, stand here. Put your left, you stand in front of the elephant on the left-hand side of the elephant's head, and the elephant's facing like back behind you. You put your left foot on the elephant's like near the knee, like kind of like on the thigh, I guess. And then you hang on to the ear, and the ear's, I don't know, 3/4 of an inch thick or something. You hang on with your hands on the ear, and then you're not in charge anymore. That's all you have to do. The elephant handler, in this case, Gunther put all of us on our elephant for the first time so he could, make the elephants really did listen to him, and it was great. And he said, okay, so you jump on top of the elephant when I say lift, and when I give her the command to lift, you get up on top. And so I did. I stood there and I'm looking at him and I'm looking at her. She's really tall. And he finally said, Eva, lift. And she vaulted me. I was never vaulted in my life. Vaulted me. I went up and over the elephant and back down onto the floor. And I'm looking up at this elephant, which is really big now because I'm looking up to the belly and the legs and everything. He comes and grabs my hand like that, the flying trapeze grip where you're both grabbing each other. He pulled me out from underneath the elephant and he said, Clowny, next time. And he made me do it again right away. I mean, there's a purpose for that. He said, next time, stop on top. He didn't say that, right? I figured it just happened, right? I had to be in charge of my body. So we did it again. I stopped on top. I grabbed, they have the headpiece, with the thick leather strap around the neck, and I grabbed the neck for dear life. And he started making her walk. And I'm like, oh, I'll never get this. And, 500 shows a year for 3 years, 1,500 rides later, I got it.
You got it.
Got it.
I
never flew over the top again.
You and I have talked a little bit about Gunther Gable Williams and your relationship with this tremendous performer, animal trainer person, really. You and Clown Alley had a name for him, right?
Oh, we had lots of names for him.
Was Goober.
Goober Giblet was one. We were just, Goober Giblet and nothing derogatory. It was like we had a little song, Gunther Gable Williams, da 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 da. Just
Your tigers are loose, right?
Oh, tigers are loose. I think they're going to Williams. Yeah, your tigers are loose. We call him G-Man and anything. We all knew who we were talking about because there's only one him, right? You don't want to overuse someone's name, right?
so you're up in the Carolinas, and the snowstorm occurs. Keith Green is from North Carolina.
Oh yeah.
He came up with a little side trip for y'all.
He did. A lot of us would travel between two cities. We'd drive someone's car overland, or we'd do anything we could if there was something to see or relatives to visit for a free roll along the way, right? And this was to ski because Boone, North Carolina does have some ski slopes, and the snow had been so heavy. We were like in the Greensboro area, North and South Carolina, and they were really, really lots of snow. I mean, lots. So ski season was open. None of us are regular skiers. Obviously, we ride elephants. We don't ski, right? But this one trip, Gunther said, I would like to ski. He did. He somehow broke away from riding the train, and he came skiing with about 20 people. There was some musicians there. There was a spotlight operator. There was me. There was a couple other clowns. I mean, it was people who wanted to do this. So we would drive to somewhere and get in a hotel and get about 5 hours of sleep. And then when the sun came up, we'd go up on the ski lift because we had to go to the next town by the end of the day. So we had to time everything really carefully. And Gunther knew how to ski from being in Germany. He had skied as a child, he said. And and I know that the time period where he grew up in Germany, I don't think skiing was like the only thing that people did for vacation.
No. He said later that it was that particular day at Sugar Mountain in North Carolina really was it brought back some of the only happy memories he had of his childhood during World War II.
Well, he grabbed that ski lift, we're all standing in line for the ski lift. And there's some, if you think getting on an elephant is hard, try a fast moving ski lift when you have to hop on and hold your skis. Right? No problem for him. He hadn't done it for years. The ski lift was somewhat modern compared to what he was used to in Germany, I'm sure. He jumped on that thing. He was searching out the hill. We were all watching him, waiting to see. And he skied. He had moguls and everything. I'm going down the hill on my bottom because I lost the ski. He's like doing the moguls and he's just yelling and having a good time. He got back to the chalet. I mean, he did several trips up the mountain and he kind of knew his limit on how much he could ski and he came in and a bunch of us we were done too. And we were there having hot chocolate with our feet on a cushion at a big fireplace. And he just settled in, put his feet up and got the hot chocolate. And he was just telling us about as a kid in Germany and some of the fun that he had with, I think maybe even before he joined the circus, he skied somewhere. I don't know where it was.
So, when you think of the people, Gunther Gable Williams, obviously, but what a clown alley you had in those days, too. Tell me a little bit about some of those great clowns that you worked with.
Okay, I got to know the great clowns, the sharing clowns, and the very seasoned clowns because of my assignment, one as an apprentice to Lou Jacobs. And I thought, I never knew Lou Jacobs before. I wasn't a circus family, so this was all new to me. And then people showed me posters of his face on so many renditions of Ringling Brothers, Barnum Bailey, and I thought, I'm apprenticing to a pretty famous fellow here, And actually, I had 3 years of apprenticeship, which meant that I would work with him sometimes with his props, set his props before his gag routine comes up. Like I remember one that he had this hay wagon and there was a smaller guy that sat on top of the hay wagon and then there was a driver. And I was leading the pony, but I had to go to the stable as part of my apprenticeship. I had to go to the stable, identify the correct pony that was trained to pull this wagon, get the pony, put the trace on and the halter and everything, bring the thing in to backstage where the wagon was and hook it up right. And there was always someone from the ring stock crew checking to make sure it wasn't going to fall apart on Lou, not on me, but on Lou, right? And so we get it all hooked up and they kept telling me, don't bend over in front of that pony. And sure enough, one day I didn't remember that. And I know why they said it every day, because that pony was a biter. And it was a very strong and an obedient puller, but it also took opportunities with its teeth. Bit me in the butt once. So that was the only time I allowed that to happen. So I've got all these things you don't do twice, right? Fly over the top of an elephant, land in the concrete, put your butt in front of the pony. No, none of that. So, and so I helped Lou, and the benefit of being apprenticed to Lou Jacobs was I had 5-minute periods of time to talk to him backstage every single show for a couple of years. So I had many minutes. So I kept coming up with questions, and my best answer that he gave me, I said, Papa Lou, how do you know they're going to laugh? How do you know it's funny when you put a gag together? Because we're always creating gags that got rejected, how do you know it's funny? And he says, well, in a very deep German accent, which I cannot recreate, but well, when you do the gag and they laugh, it's funny. When they don't laugh, Ain't funny. That was his answer. How do you know? How do you know? You know, I'm all full of energy. He called us spaghetti, you know, easy, 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 you know. So anybody who ever met Lou Jacobs at Clown College knows what spaghetti means. You can ask anybody about that word.
Spaghetti is a little too much, a little over the top.
Little over the top, little over the top. But he did one thing, like he said, I'll tell you, because I didn't know what spaghetti meant in terms of clowning. I know there's Italian gags where spaghetti flies all over. It's not that. He said, it's too much energy and you're too, what did he call it? Too, cluing the audience in too hard. Like if you look at someone in the audience and you think they're crazy, or you look at another clown and you think they're crazy, you want to tell the audience they're crazy. He said, don't do I know or I think they're crazy. You don't do it like that. He says, get the audience's eyes, look at the clown, look back to the audience and go. He did it with one motion, right? So the economy of motion was what he taught us most. And every one of us had the same kind of loose energy that was just too much. He taught us how to slow down and communicate.
You know, you were there with Frosty Little, you were there with Bobby Kay.
Yeah, Bobby Kay helped me with makeup and costumes for like a couple of years. And he even loaned me one of his costumes, which is now, I believe that's the one that's hanging in the Clown Hall of Fame in Baraboo, the red and white striped one. I think that's the one from Bobby Kay.
This is, I always like this picture here. Tell me a little bit about what's going on in this picture.
This is my favorite policeman from Boston. He had the backstage duty at the Boston Garden before it became North Fleet Bank, whatever. I'm not sure the name of it, but to us it was the other garden. It was the Boston Garden, right? And he was always there every day. He was there with a cup of Joe, right? And these two phone, but you know, we're used to phone things like this backstage, because sometimes you'd stand in line with a roll of quarters waiting to use them. But during a certain time in the show, I had the balloons ready for the balloon chase, and I was the one that landed on them and broke them. And in that particular year, I had to be like mid-70s or something. And he would always meet me there. He would have his break and just meet me there every show. And he was kind of flirty, and I was kind of flirty back and forth, knowing full well I'll be gone in 2 weeks. But he was so filled with Boston information. If you needed anything, I know a guy. You know, and that's kind of too New Jersey, but I don't know how to do the Boston accent. But he knew.
But you know, traveling around the country, you need people like that, right?
You do, and they're invaluable when you're in their neck of the woods, because you know, like, do you need a doctor? Do you need to have, you need a cobbler? You need to get your shoes fixed.
And they're big shoes.
A guy who can do it in a day, right? And that's important when your shoes aren't.
So it's really fascinating to you know, learn about some of these things, and we have a lot more to go, but I just want to remind everybody that this is Circus History Live. Our guest today is Peggy Williams, recent inductee to the Circus Ring of Fame. Circus Historical Society has Circus History Live every month, where we talk to someone about the circus history and the history today. And I just want to take just a second, a little bit of a commercial here, I guess. I want to tell you about something that happened just a couple of nights ago. This is Kevin Venardos, who is a member of the Circus Historical Society, former Ringling ringmaster, currently has his own circus, Venardos Circus. He just donated $1,000 to the Circus Historical Society, and it was actually in conjunction with the opening of his new Big Top in Dawsonville, Georgia. That's Stacia and Monica Kelly. Those are the daughters of Emmett Kelly, the famous clown, and they were there to cut the ribbon on his new Big Top, and he marked the occasion by giving the CHS $1,000. We want to thank him for that, and we also would like for you to consider membership in the Circus Historical Society. You get our monthly or quarterly Bandwagon magazine. We have newsletters that come out, and it's really a way for you to support circus history and the circus of the future too. And that's why we do things like Circus History Live with Peggy today. You can also visit circushistory.org to learn more about it and to join. So, you know, that's the commercials over with. Let's talk a little bit more about you, Peggy. You know, when you were with the circus, you and I have spoken over the years about some of the memorable things that happened to you. Tell us about what happened in about 1974 or so, when you were down in San Diego, or maybe even Los
Okay,
Angeles.
so yeah, it was a red unit, and we were, I think, maybe going from San Diego to Fresno, or it was at Southern California towns, and we had a special event that we did at Camp Pendleton, which is the Marine base. Oddly enough, my brother, who was a Marine in Vietnam, went there for his training. So I had never seen Camp Pendleton. It's not really a tourist attraction, for the soldiers. So I was so excited. And we had a public relations event that was outstanding. And anyone who was around in the 1970s and went there will never forget what we saw. First of all, when we got to Camp Pendleton, we went by a circus bus and a charter bus, I think. And we brought a bunch of circus acts to do at their open amphitheater there that they have at Camp Pendleton for entertainment. It didn't have any roof or anything, so we did the ground base acts. I think we had ponies, and I think they might have brought one elephant. I think I can't remember all the acts that they brought, but we brought the clown car that was all painted up, and we entered. Oh, and there was a tent city, and that's where all these Asian kids from Vietnam, they had been airlifted. If any, you can look it up. I think 1975 Vietnam orphan airlift, and that's a great Google it. It's essential for these kids that they're alive, because they were saved by a plane from the United States and a very courageous captain. There were a lot of issues going on, and they got out just in time before that part of Vietnam got really decimated. They were already orphans for whatever reason. Maybe their parents were dead. We really don't know, and they couldn't tell us. They were little young kids. They were landed in Camp Pendleton, and they built a tent city, and each tent had like 7 or 8 kids and a Marine, right? And that was their go-to person. That Marine was in charge of their souls, right? Whatever they did, wherever they went, he knew, and he taught them things. And they had people teaching some of them language and all those kind of things. But there was a road right down the middle of that tent city, and there were thousands of those kids there. And I suspect there were probably some Vietnamese adults that came with the kids, but they were orphans. And so they didn't know their name. They didn't have paperwork. They were scattered. They were collected and scooted right out of Vietnam in a nick of time. They get to Camp Pendleton, and all of a sudden, here comes this clown car with a huga horn going down the street with all these kids in tents, right? And they're looking out the tent, and the Marines knew what was going to happen. They knew, the kids knew something special was going to happen, but they've never seen a circus. They grew up in a war zone or an orphanage, right? So this is a live entertainment like they've never seen. They didn't know how to act. And they looked at their Marine, and the Marine went, yeah, yes, you can clap, you can wave, you can wave. The Marines were basically telling them what they could do. And then they would stop the clown car, and one person would get out, like a Jim Tinsman. He was in the clown car, I remember, and he'd get out. And then they close the door and take the car a little further, like they would on the Hippodrome track, but for a whole lot longer distance. And I was in the clown car, and Kathy Herb was there, and all kinds of good friends. We were Ron Jarvis and Billy Baker, and I can't think of the whole crew that was there. And I wish
What an opportunity you gave those children, who had come out of a war zone, and they were exposed to the clowns from The Greatest Show on Earth.
So they followed us. We created a parade with them, because some spec floats were being pulled by Jeeps. And it was a really nice little parade right through their very new neighborhood, the neighborhood of safety. Welcome to America. We have peace. We have good food. We have a home for you, and we have circus. What else do you need, right? And they all went into the amphitheater, and we did a show for them. It was the best day of my life with the PR, with public relations, because it's so memorable and it meant so much. Many times after that, I said to new performers that I'd meet at the airport, or they'd be, coming in to replace someone in the show from their country or whatever. I'd say, welcome to America, but never, like we said, welcome to these kids. And we made them have a good time. We made them laugh. And the Marines were teaching them that they can applaud. They didn't have to be quiet. They could scream and yell and shout and point and laugh. They could do anything. They could have the best time. And to me, that's one of the best days of my life.
So
There's
tell me
been
a little bit
many,
about,
but
you know,
that's one of the best.
you and I have had a number of conversations over the years, and I've kind of tried to think of some of the things that just are amazing. And one of the stories you told me was about the time you were assistant performance director for the Blue Unit, and Ronald Reagan came to the circus to see it. Tell me a little bit about at the Washington Armory when Ronald Reagan came.
Well, that was pretty amazing. I mean, we would always get visits from mayors and governors and people running for election and all that kind of stuff. But Ronald Reagan was a lot of our parents' age at that point in time, and it was so special to have the president in the audience. And he had lots of people around him. He also was greeting children in the audience, and in that old building in Washington, boy.
Armory, yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm so good. In the Armory, they put a stage out there in Ring 2, and he, the circus had to put seating into that armory the very first time, because it really was an armory where they would do all kinds of exercises with military people. But he talked, Irvin particularly, I think, wanted to have a show place there, and there was a lot of competition going on with another circus producer in Maryland or somewhere.
Circus
And
America, yeah.
yeah, and so they got chairs in there and had the circus in there. But when Reagan was there, we were doing a special promotional thing called Safe Kids at that point in time, and people could sign up in the lobby at these tables, and they could get their kids fingerprinted. It was in the 80s, it was the beginning of people stealing children. I mean, it's nothing like it is today, right? We have DNA that we know about now. DNA existed then, but nobody knew how to use it. But we're taking a little lock of the hair and putting it on the card, so the parent would have proof, several types of proof about their kids. And this was a free thing that Ringling Brothers did. And Ronald Reagan was there the days that we were doing that at the Armory. It was very special. And of course, the backstage walkthrough was pretty intense. People were not only walking in and out of every dressing room, his staff, right? The CIA or whoever it was, right? FBI, whatever. And there was also people climbing through the rafters above the false ceiling to the real ceiling in case, just to keep him safe.
When you think about some of those people who came to see the show, here's a picture of you with Red Skelton. This, I think, is in St. Louis at the Kemper Arena.
Yep.
You're not a clown at this point. You're working, I guess, as assistant performance director on the Blue Unit.
Yep.
But Red Skelton had a long history with circuses. You must have had a great time that day.
Well, I had a great time seeing him because I'd seen him before. Now, he used to come around in Birmingham sometimes, our shows. He would be doing a theater show, and he would never really advertise his shows in the town or make public appearances in the town until his show was pretty much sold out. I mean, that was one of his things, because you say the name Red Skelton back in those days, and it's, I want to get a ticket, right? So he was a sales point. He had a TV show, and he played Clem Cadiddlehopper and some other comedy characters and stuff. But he would come to Clown Alley, and he took us out to breakfast. He took Clown Alley out to breakfast a number of times when I was on tour, and I'm sure other times on the other unit that I wasn't on. And he said, I don't want anyone to come in makeup. I want to see you. I want to see the clown behind the makeup. And he said, to that point, because he had started a performing arts kind of school in California, and one of the points that he was making was that you need to learn about the business of entertainment as well as the performance part. You work real hard at the performance, but you need to know about the business. So don't put your clown picture at the front of it or in the corner, at least put your picture of your real self, right? Always represent your real self when you're negotiating. That was one of the things that he stressed with us. And it was kind of interesting because when we negotiated or renegotiated contracts, it was usually between shows on a Saturday or something. So it didn't quite apply to us, but he was amazing. And then I have a signed thing. He called everybody dear friend, and he signed a little picture of myself and him and Frosty and Mike Keever, may they rest in peace, right? That was taken backstage when we were in makeup, and we surrounded him and got this picture, and it's one of my favorite things in my house.
Well, this photo here is a picture of you. I think this is probably about 1977 on the red unit, and you're the
Yep.
queen of the Mardi Gras.
Yes, I was.
You were the queen of the Mardi Gras.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
this kind of big spectacle we don't see this today in a big
No.
arena. I mean, even the big ice shows and things like that don't have that. Tell us a little bit what this must have been like to prepare for a big spec like this, where you were.
Well,
queen.
there was a couple parts to this. So there was this costume, and there's another photo with my king of the Mardi Gras was Dwayne Thorpe. And his costume was as ornate as mine was. He didn't have the hair that I had. I mean, that headpiece and that neck piece, that was hysterical. But this was all done in velvets and stones that were hand sewn, and sequins that were all hand sewn into that velvet. They make sequined material now, but everything back then was hand. It must have taken thousands of hours for this costume and this set of costumes for the Mardi Gras to be made.
And
you can also
just one of the costumes that Don Foote designed for your show that year.
Don Foote is one person that made me feel so good. You grow up and you always think you have deficits, like, oh, maybe you talk too fast, or maybe you speak funny, or I mean, odd funny. Maybe maybe you're too tall, you're too short, you're too wide. You don't have the figure Marilyn Monroe did, or Barbie, the Barbie doll. But one thing that Don Foote set me to peace, right? The first year I was on the show, the first year I performed in those specs was 1971. I went to clown college in 70. And when I went into wardrobe, first they never knew what to do with the girl, right? That would be me. Said, okay, all the show girls go to wardrobe and get measured. And so all the girls go. So I went with the girls and I said, not you, you're a clown. No. They would say, all the clowns go, no, not you. They're the guy clowns, right? They never quite had me figured out in the first year. I was kind of catch as catch can, trying to figure out where to go and what do they call me. So I kept hearing Mr. Barstow, the director, say, what do we do with the girl? So they were making stuff up for me, but Don Foote said, I know what to do for that girl. That girl can wear a substantive costume, because he was dealing with showgirls who were size 0, 2, 4, and 6, maybe, right? I wasn't no 0. I had double digit number, in my body size. And he was so happy because that big thing that was off my neck and everything, I could handle it, even in clown shoes. It was hysterical. And he made great costumes for me for the whole decade, pretty much, that I was there. And he made me a Marilyn Monroe costume. And really, I mean, this was just so much fun. But it was also fun working with Dwayne, because we had a chariot that was made for our entrance, right? We were riding the chariot next to each other, and we would wave as we went around. It was so much fun. And I'm from Madison, I know corn stalks and hay. I don't know this kind of show business. It was so fun. I loved it.
But obviously you knew something, because you were tapped to become not only the first female clown college graduate, but you also were the first female assistant performance director, later performance director on the Ringling Circus. So tell me a little bit about how that all came about.
Okay, so I clowned for 10 years. I was from 1971 through 1980. And then in 80, I went to the corporate office in Virginia. It was, in Washington, D.C. then, before it moved to Virginia. And while I was there, I started working with Dr. Mildred Fenner, who was Wilcott Fenner's wife. And we wanted to help teachers use the circus in the classroom. And that whole stuff started working then. She was creating a book about circus information on all 50 states. She was doing research for that. She was the editor for the NIE Journal. And that's NEA Journal, National Education Association. And so I worked there for about 2 years, and the education department, we were getting letters from teachers all the time. Help me use some things in the circus that I can use in the classroom, so that we can justify tickets, that we have to buy tickets for the circus. And so we were working toward that goal, and we were communicating. It was all by mail. So slow. Now it's like, then we started with websites and stuff later. But in 1982, then Mattel, of course, owned the show at that point in time, and they saw no need for education department at all. They redlined the whole department. And Alan Bloom called me in his office because he was a really, really great supporter of educational outreach to schools of all kinds. The clowns would do advanced things in deaf schools and, you know, schools for the blind and schools for kids on the spectrum and all kinds of things. I mean, we were going all over the place trying to teach about circus to special needs people. It was really fun, and it was so worthwhile to our souls because it was just, you know, it's good stuff to do. Did it sell tickets? Don't know, but good stuff
But
to do.
it was important community involvement, and it reinforced,
Totally.
you know, the visit of the circus to the town too. So,
Oh, absolutely.
so I think Mike Nelson's on this call today with us too.
There we go.
There's Mike on the left and you on the right, and that's Henry Ringling
Yeah.
North in the middle. I think
Yeah.
that's at the United Center in Chicago.
I think it was right. They visited there. John and Henry both visited there sometimes. And this particular day, he was by himself. And we were so thrilled to connect because all of us who were in the management or even in the clown college during that time, it was a transitionary period between the old management team and the new management team. And we're, you know, personally, I know Mike Nelson was part of that transition. We looked at him and we went, oh, we got to take care of him. We got to make sure anything he needs, we get for him, right? Going to keep him safe, but there's an elephant right there if he wants to touch it, all that. Just elephants just lurking in the background. But no, it was really great.
A lot of elephants over the years too.
Oh yeah, yeah. So we honored those people when they came. We tried to, you know, consider. We always knew they were coming because, you know, there were tickets set aside, and we tried to take care of celebrities, people of honor in the circus industry, people from, you know, kings and queens, you name it. We all tried to make it really special for them and acknowledge their presence.
So you were very close to Charlie Bauman at this time, the great tiger trainer who spent 10 years with tigers before he became full-time performance director, but you were right there with him too, right?
Well, so when Mattel said we don't need an education department, my job got cut. Alan Bloom called me into his office in the office in Washington, D.C. and said, well, I've got some good news and some bad news. And I said, well, give me the bad news first. And he said, your job's been cut. Don't take it personally. Like, yeah, right. It's not easy. Mattel said, you know, we're owned by Mattel at this point in time. So that budget, it no longer exists. So you can't continue doing what you were doing. And he said, he said, I want you to go home. I want you to have a good dinner. I want to get a good night's sleep. Come back in tomorrow morning and we'll talk some more. And I said, I don't know what to say. I'm just, you know, I didn't do anything wrong. I just didn't understand how someone could just not even care about education because I cared. But he said, no, really, come in tomorrow. Kenneth has a meeting with you at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. So be ready. And when I talked to Kenneth the next morning, I wanted to say thank you for the opportunity. I'd had a 10-year free ride around the country with elephants and clowns and orangutans and chimpanzees and, you know, still walkers and everything, and a live band with Keith Green playing, you know. I'm like, oh my gosh. So he said, well, how would you like to go to the Blue Unit? We have a position that's going to be opening there. And I'd like to have you think about that in the management team. We've got to move you from one unit to the other because it's not smart to be a performer and then try to manage the performers that you were chummy with. You know, it's just common that they do that. And I said, wow. Oh, I think I went home that night. I said, let me know. I'll get back to you. I was like, wow, flabbergasted. So I went home. I told my roommate I was going to go on the road, going to move onto a train. She wasn't pleased because we were just getting to know each other. Been there about a year and a half. And I came back in. I said, yes, when and where do you need me? And he said, 2 weeks from now. Like, oh, Lordy. Ended up going, this is too funny, ended up going to, I think it was Charleston, West Virginia. And the next stop would have been Washington, D.C. or something around that. I have to look at the route card to get that for sure. But when we went to Washington, Charlie Bowman came in, who I'd never really worked with before. Now I'm working with Charlie every day, every show. I'm keeping all the records. I'm doing all the, making sure the reports get done. And he comes and and I'm doing all the PR too. The promoter gives me the PR slips or gives them to Charlie. He reviews them and then he gives them to me on my desk. He came in and he dumped a whole stack for Washington, D.C. of PR slips. I mean, these were those triple colored sheets, you tear one off and
Yep.
those things. And there was a whole, like maybe an inch of them, right? And it's a lot. It was all for the parade to the White House, right? Now, Reagan had been shot at this point in time. So we know exactly when he got shot, but we didn't know when he was coming home. The day we did the parade in Washington, D.C., he waved to us from the second floor window. He had come home from the hospital the day before, I think. So he waved, he had an arm in a sling and
I actually wrote an article about the circus and the presidency a few years ago, and you and I talked about that. But I found Ronald Reagan's diary actually for that day. And he spoke about the fact that, the circus parade came by the White House today. And he said, I waved at them and I think that they saw me.
oh, we definitely saw. There he is. We're pointing, right? Waving. The clowns are standing up in the wagons and everything. It was a wonderful. I wasn't the clown anymore. I was wearing, like professional clothes, parade clothes or whatever. And he thought, yes, definitely we saw him. We were so happy to greet him.
So then, Feld decides that they're going to try this gold unit out. There's going to be a unit that goes to Japan, and you were part of that too.
Yeah, that was 1988. I had been working at Disneyland on behalf of Feld Entertainment for the winter months of 1988, January, February, March. And this gold unit was going to go to Japan in the summer and fall for 7 months. And what we were doing in Disneyland, we had 70 performers. There were 35 clowns and 35 performers. And I was the person I had to wear a 1 pound thing on my belt loop. It was great. My name at Disneyland was Circus One. And I'd hear Circus One, please meet so-and-so from security at, this shop or that Main Street area, whatever. And they weren't used to having clowns, freewheel clowns. So it was really fun. Every now and then a clown would do something that they don't do at Disneyland. Nothing bad, just something they don't do there. Like you don't meet and greet so tight with individuals like we used to do in the circus and shake hands in the audience, right? At any rate, after that, Mr. Feld Kenneth asked me if I would like to take the show to Japan. And as it turned out, and this was all part of the plan, I just didn't see it all put together until the puzzle pieces started connecting. Most of the cast I worked with there in Disneyland were the ones that were vetted to go to Japan. And so I knew them. I knew how they worked. I knew they were reliable. I knew they were professional, and I knew their names. And so that worked out really great. And then I was in Japan until November for 7 months. We played 3 cities, Sapporo, Tokyo, and Osaka. It was really—
This is under canvas, a huge tent.
Huge, beautiful tent with those turrets or whatever, don't know what you call them, but it had lots of points. You could string a high wire between 2 of those, and it was stable enough to hold a high wire someone could walk on. It was awesome.
Yeah.
And so we had the best part was the audience, right? We took 16 elephants to Japan. It tripled the elephant population in the entire country. They had 5 elephants, I think, in the Tokyo Zoo. We brought 16 more. So that was cool too. We had 2 herds that had been put together for that tour. And we learned a lot over there. And we learned about the Japanese culture and what they do think is funny. For some reason, the women always hide when they want to laugh out loud, they kind of hide their laughter a little bit. And especially when they're counting how many elephants are entering the arena through that big door over there. They're in 5, 10, 15. It was so much fun. But the most fun was when the sumo wrestlers came to the circus. They fell in love with Ringling Brothers. They even learned how to say the name. It's all those R's, L's, they're hard to say in the Japanese language. with a Japanese accent, but they came to the circus and we had to give them, because all the seats were made for the Japanese size individuals, except for each sumo wrestler got 3 seats. Because I'd say large bandwidth. Let's talk about that, right? It was pretty. So there's this whole empty section, about 10 people come in and fill it. And they loved meeting the clowns. They took us to the sumo stables where they do their performance and their rehearsals. And I learned that women cannot touch the surface that they work on. And I said, can I feel the surface? No, they had to burn it if I did. So that's what they told me, at least. Anyway, you keep learning, right? Just keep learning.
So you came back, you continued to travel with the show, but then you also got a position at the headquarters. And tell me a little bit about that. I mean, you were doing so much for the organization, including, funerals and things like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, so when I came back, I went to Disneyland in '89 for the second year for 3 months, January, February, March. And then I became the corporate side person doing more education stuff. We were at the point where that ownership had changed. And we were at the point where education really mattered because a lot of schools could no longer afford to buy tickets. And that was a real challenge. The school budgets have been cut around the country. I mean, if they could even afford a bus, it would be amazing. So the promoters are working really hard to not lose that school audience, because when the teachers take you somewhere, it has meaning. Sometime in your life, you'll come again, right? And so we were really busy with that. And we did have some things happen. I mean, in the 90s and the early 2000s, circus is not a place where everything is always safe, although you do everything you can to make it so, but accidents do happen. And we seem to have a period of time when it was necessary to call Father Jerry in, Father Jerry, who is a national circus chaplain.
Jerry, and he was also 2023 Ring of Fame inductee.
Yeah. And I'm proud to be in his class. I had him on speed dial. Now we had cell phones. First year I went to Japan, we didn't have cell phones, but now we're near the 2000. We're getting cell phones. It's easy to get a hold of people. It's easy to send immediate messages. And Kenneth would sometimes say, get Father Jerry to the unit if something happened, right? A train issue, a fatality in the cast, whatever it might have been. And we got way too good at organizing funerals.
But that was your job, was to
that was one of the things I did. Yeah, I did. And but we celebrated with Father Jerry too. I mean, he's the one that reached out. He baptized children. He confirmed children. The catechism was going on all under his domain, and he would marry those children when they grown up. He performed a lot of weddings and a number of funerals of parents who had passed. He was always there.
Services and things like
everything. That. Oh yeah, holidays were big. He always saw opening, and he continued the tradition, the long-held tradition of blessing that train and the show and the animals and the staff and the crew and all the participants in the circus before it left Tampa at that point in time. Then it was 92. Yeah, we started in Tampa. So yeah.
So Peggy, you continued on with the show really until the end. Tell us a little bit about what it was like in 2017 when the decision was made that the show was going to be taken off the road.
Okay, so first of all, I was in Orlando at the circus that particular Saturday. And my brother called me from Wisconsin. He said, "What is going on with Ringling Brothers?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I was watching CNN or one of the news channels that has the scroll that goes across the bottom. And he said, it says Ringling Brothers is closing down." And none of us knew it at that point in time. It was that show. I mean, my brother always watched the news because he was a police detective. So, anything going on, he had to know where the traffic's going to be, a mess or whatever. He said, "Well, find out, because that doesn't sound good." And I said, "I don't know. Let me find out." And nobody knew during that show, but they had a cast meeting after the show and they let everybody know then. So that news was just an hour earlier before we got to know what was going on. And I don't think the actual date was set then, but we had just gotten the first girl ringmaster, and that show was new. It was just a couple months old, and we thought, how could they do that? You get to understand these things after a while. But the departure, the year before that, in 2016, the elephants had come off the show, and they all went to the Elephant Center in Polk County. And when we saw all 42 elephants that were Feld-owned elephants all in one place at one time, that really very rarely happens. It was like, oh my gosh, they really are off the road, every single one of them. And you start looking at them, they don't look alike at all. You know them by now, right? And that was really sad. It was sad for the performers, but I have to say, my hat off to all the performers and the staff and everybody who worked so hard to properly close the show. It's not something that you do a lot. You create shows at Ringling Brothers for 146 years. You don't close them, right? So there's a lot of skill and talent that goes into that process too. And who knows, right? You know, where you can do something different the next time. You hope there isn't the next time. But it was a very touching time, and I saw a lot of people starting to figure out, what are we going to do next? We've been doing circus all our lives, and now we have to go back to our country, and on, that kind of stuff, right? And I saw people recreating new acts, and I saw them just being very sad because they're going to miss this family. You can get a hug, you can get 60 hugs in about a minute when you walk in the back door, right? I've done that, right? And now they're all over the world. I'll never be able to get 60 hugs. It has to be on a Facebook thing, right?
Well, you have continued to be involved in so many ways. We're going to continue on for just a minute because we have been going for about an hour. If you have a question, by the way, for Peggy, at the bottom of your screen, you'll see it says chat there. Feel free to put in your questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can if you have them. But I want to talk a little bit about kind of what Peggy Williams has been doing post-Feld, post-circus, because you are so active in so many things. The Ringling Museum, the show person's winter quarters. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing these days.
Okay, so one of the things that was emergent with the closing of in 2017 of the show was that a lot of people didn't have a plan for where to go next because it came up so quickly. And Father Jerry was very involved with the circus and traveling shows that show people's winter quarters, which is basically a trailer park with 10 trailers in it, accommodates 10 families at a time. And I was able to join the board at that point in time, along with Tom Dillon and Lee Stevens and Gina Elaine. She and the guys, we were all the new class of board members. We had lost a number of board members who had passed since the beginning of it. But it's a place where people can have the same thing everybody wants: affordable living in Florida when you retire. That's what the whole goal is of that. You have a rig, you don't want to have to park it and let it rust. You want to live in it. Drive your rig in and you hook it up. And for very nominal fee, you can live there despite what the going rate is in town during high season, right? It's amazing. And we've had a number of great circus families there, and also a few carnival faces, and someone from concessions and someone from Monster Jam. And, you know, it's like that. It's for traveling people. So I've been on the board for there, and we actually have a train car that Mr. Feld provided to Father Jerry. He said, all you got to do is move it. And Father Jerry said, can you see what we can do about moving the train? So I started learning about fundraising. Guess it cost a little bit to move it down Highway 41 all the way to Palmetto,
Here's a photo. That's Father Jerry Hoga there, and Carol Zabatinsky. You can see the Ringling car in the background there. About the time that it was being restored. Tell us a little bit about what that car is today, too.
Okay, that car today is, well, the front half, we tore down the walls in the front half, and it's like a community place. It has a huge oven. It has a huge refrigerator, and the residents there can use that for large pizzas, parties, and whatever. We've been there for a few occasions where we made cookies for Christmas one time and had tables outside with all kinds of frosting, and the kids decorated their cookies. It was so much fun. And then the rest of it, there's a library dedicated in Tom Dillon's name. There's a couple other rooms. There's a clown room, and there's another
room, doesn't it? When I was there, it looked like it was Peggy Williams' room.
No, it's a clown room. It's got a couple different clown faces in there and a lot of interesting things to look at. And I mean, it's not quite a museum yet, but we're working on it. And now COVID took a bite out of our community things. It was absolutely devastating to not be able to have people in a small place together. So everybody kind of stayed by their trailers during the whole COVID thing because, you know, you just didn't know where you're going to, what's going to happen or where you're going to get it. At any rate, so that's one thing. I now work at the Ringling Museum. This is my fourth and a half year working there in the archives. So I'm not public facing, but I'm up in the archives, and my experience in circus in Ringling Brothers and all the personnel and the cultures and everything has come in handy with identifying photographs and sources for information about specific customer requests that we get, a lot of requests. So, and they're all weird.
I want to thank you in front of all of the folks on this call too, because about, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, we put all of the Circus Historical Society bandwagons online.
Right.
You can find those on the Internet Archives, and these go back to the 1930s, really. You were very, very helpful with that as we got those online, and we want to thank you for that. For those of you, you don't even have to be a member of the Circus Historical Society, but go to Internet Archives and you look up Circus Historical Society and bandwagon, and you can thank Peggy Williams for her help in getting those online. Thank you.
And Miss Norris has just put the link to that on the chat, so everybody can grab that link, and you can. The bandwagon is filled with circus history, which is, you know, how I look at it is Ringling Brothers made circus history. We made history there, and now I work where we keep history in an honorable fashion, all related to the same thing, that circus, the great circus.
Well, Peggy,
not just Ringling, all circuses.
Peggy, it is obvious why you are a new inductee to the Circus Ring of Fame. It's been an absolute delight to have you on Circus History Live tonight. We wish you many, many more years of circus and entertainment involvement, because you truly are one of the king poles here. And I know that everyone on the call agrees with me. Circus History Live is a monthly opportunity to get together and talk to some of the greats in circus history. Peggy Williams, thank you for joining us tonight. This has been a wonderful experience, and we will see you down the road.
Let me add my thanks as well. This was a terrific program. Peggy and Chris, phenomenal job. And I noticed a few people logged on late. Remember, this program is recorded. It will be on the Circus Historical Society YouTube channel tomorrow. And thank you, everyone, for participating. And as Chris just said, we'll see you down the road. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
See you down the road somewhere.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.